The least surprising news of the day, Setién sacked. Ronald Koeman, heavily linked to that vacant job, said, is that what you're hearing as well?
Yeah, so what happened, or what has happened over the last few days, and by the way, I never trust anything that comes out of Barcelona until we actually see it done. What happened was that Josep Maria Bartomeu, the president, and his sporting directorate in the shape of Ramon Planes and Eric Abidal, were keen on the idea of Mauricio Pochettino, who of course had distanced himself from previous comments about Barcelona, but there are members of the board saying, look, we can't do this. You know, the relationship with the fans is already so strained that we don't want to do anything that risks putting their backs up, anything that risks creating more tension. And of course, he famously had said, Mauricio Pochettino, even though he's tried to disown these comments since, he famously said he'd rather work on a farm than work for Barcelona, and that was seen as too risky. I must admit, I suspect that Pochettino would have been looking at this and thinking, actually, is this really the right club at the right time for me, given that I might only be there for a year because there'll be presidential elections in a year's time? Is this really where I want to go? So the next target has become Ronald Koeman, who of course turned them down in January because he wanted to take the Netherlands national team into the European Championships. He will now have to forfeit that if he takes this job, and with the risk that, as I just said, was the case with Pochettino as well, there will be presidential elections next summer. So how long does Koeman last? Even if he does a fantastic job, and who knows what kind of job he'll do, who knows what kind of tools he'll have at his disposal to do it, even if he does a fantastic job, he's almost certainly going to be out in a year's time anyway. And I just wonder if he'll be thinking, actually, this isn't great timing. But of course, we know that it's his ambition to be at Barcelona. We know that he might well be thinking, actually, this is the only chance. And so that is what Barcelona believe will happen until it's absolutely confirmed. I must admit, I kind of feel like backing off slightly, because we've seen before that what Barcelona believe will happen isn't always what actually does happen.
I remember when Setién was appointed, a lot of us were scratching our heads thinking, well, why have they brought him in? And then a lot of people who follow La Liga closely were saying, no, this is great. This is the sort of guy they need. They can bring it back to the Barcelona way. You know, his DNA of playing is similar to that of during their peak period. What went wrong?
Well, look, what went wrong? I mean, first of all, bear in mind that Setién comes in basically because 3 or 4 other men have said no. So Xavi Hernandez has said no, who was first choice. Thierry Henry, Ronald Koeman they'd spoken to, Roberto Martinez they'd spoken to, Pochettino they'd spoken to. This is not necessarily to say that they'd offered all these guys a job, but they'd spoken to all of them. So he comes in as a 3rd, 4th, maybe even 5th choice, and I think obviously that damages his authority up to a point. He comes in because of that idea. You know, this is the guy that will bring Cruyffism back. This is the guy that will, and I think from the board's point of view, probably seen in a cynical sense rather than a romantic sense. In other words, you know, if we have this guy, this will calm people down. This will say to them, we're going in that direction that you want us to go in. These are people who maybe are naturally inclined against us, but this is a way of saying to them, you know, we're with you as well. Don't you know, your backs on us yet, because we're going in that direction. But of course, there's a difference between what a manager wants to do, what a manager has done at other clubs, and what a manager is then able to do. And at a club like Barcelona, where there's a huge amount of power and splits within the dressing room, where there are physical difficulties within the squad, unable to do some of the pressing that he wants to do, unable to play with 3 at the back, which is what he wanted to do to start with, and to express it from the perspective of the coaching staff at Barcelona under Setién, they came in and did what they could do, or more to the point, they came in and did what they were permitted to do, what they were allowed to do by the circumstances. Now that, I think we have to be careful not to completely, you know, wash them clean and say it wasn't their fault at all, because clearly it was their fault. They came into a different environment to the one they were used to. They didn't have the charisma, maybe the authority, the if you like, the presence to be able to force those ideas through. But fundamentally, is only really putting a plaster cast on a broken leg. It doesn't fix what's going on underneath. It doesn't fix the mechanical problems that are there. And I think Setién is inevitably the first victim of this, but he's not the only man guilty of it.